He could be the most exquisite gentleman, or the most insane psychopath. He could also be the brains behind a criminal organization. We've seen him as a detective and a senator. He is Kevin Spacey, one of the biggest actors of our time.
Look, we don't have time for me to mention every single person that has had such an impact on my life and such an impact on my work. And for me, it really goes back to a guidance counselor when I was in junior high who recommended that I take a drama class. It goes back to my first drama teachers. It goes back to people who believed in me and gave me a sense of confidence when I was starting out. I was very fortunate. Joe Papp, who ran the Public Theater, the New York Shakespeare Festival in New York, was an incredible mentor of mine. Jack Lemmon was an incredible mentor. Alan Pakula, Mike Nichols. And I'm still lucky that I continue to be inspired. I continue to be interested. I continue to wake up every day and feel that I'm getting support.
Kevin Spacey Fowler was born on 26th of July 1959 in New Jersey as the youngest of 3 children in the family of a secretary and a writer. He is known for keeping his personal life a complete secret. He claims that it is much easier for the audience to accept him as his character when they hardly know anything about himself.
Let's fall in love.
Kevin has been doing theater since high school, and after a few courses he was finally on one stage with the man who became his mentor and had an incredible influence on his life, the film legend Jack Lemmon.
Why be afraid of it?
I don't wake up every day and think, oh yeah, I all got it made. It's every day is a challenge to be at your best. A challenge to be as collaborative as you can be and to be as open as you can be about working with other people. Because it's only when all the elements come together, and in many ways that's sort of what my job is in this experience, or my job as a producer at Trigger Street, or my job at the Old Vic Theater as an artistic director, my job is to bring the elements together. Yeah. You have a story that you want to tell, and you try to make sure that you bring the right director, the right actor, the right designer, the right cinematographer together so that you can illuminate that story and help a filmmaker get their vision on screen. And so I'm eternally grateful to the individuals that plucked me out of nowhere, that gave me support, that tucked me under their wing, and helped me grow and gain enough confidence that I could go out there and try to beat the odds.
Meeting Kevin Spacey was an incredible experience that I can only wish can happen to everybody who's a big fan, as big as I am, for sure. My first impression of him was that he was such a gentleman because he paid me a compliment immediately about my dress, about how great I looked. He told me to call him Kevin, not Mr. Spacey, as I started very, very formally.
We've worked together for 14 years now. I started as his assistant and did that for a few years, and I've run the company now for the last 8 years. And it's great. He's one of my best friends and pretty easygoing. And I mean, as everybody, ups and downs, there's peaks and valleys all the time. But generally, it's good to be able to work with a friend and to be as successful as we've been.
Anybody will immediately think of Seven, The Usual Suspects, and American Beauty. These are 3 iconic roles that history of cinema, I can't even imagine how history of cinema would look without these 3 movies, and how these 3 movies would actually look without him. Kevin Spacey's film career begins with a few more modest roles until Bryan Singer's movie The Usual Suspects.
Kevin became Verboten so impressively that the role brought him an Academy Award for supporting role and made him one of the best and most sought-after actors in Hollywood.
He can play the biggest psychopath and he can play the best person in the world, and you can only show him up to here and you will get it immediately.
David Fincher's Seven came right after, next to Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow. Apart from an amazing role, the film also brought him the friendship with Fincher, with whom they will work in the future as well.
I'm not sure that the difference is whether you're doing a short film or whether you're doing a feature film are that great. The length of time involved is different. But in each of these cases, you're trying to make sure that you set out to tell the story you want to tell, that you're being true to the storytelling, that you try to, again, bring the right elements together in terms of a writer or a director, that you stave off the bad ideas that can come from any number of places that can sort of set you off in a wrong direction.
I feel like I've been in a coma for about 20 years, and I'm just now waking up.
The other director with whom they have a pretty special bond is Sam Mendes. American Beauty affirmed Spacey's status as a phenomenal actor and brought him a second Oscar, this time for a leading role.
The best thing a producer can do is step back. If you've hired the right people and you believe in them, and you believe in the process they're going through, then sometimes the best thing to do is to not get involved. And you know, you've chosen to mention a film, Social Network, that we just got so blessed with, a story that had all the elements of what makes great drama. One of the greatest writers in terms of screen that has ever been, Aaron Sorkin, one of the greatest directors that has ever been, in David Fincher. And a studio that believed in what we were doing and supported us 150%, and has continued to be the home where Trigger Street is based, and many of our films are coming out of Sony. I suppose the best example that I have currently is House of Cards.
Spacey plays the ruthless Senator Frank Underwood in the TV show Next to Robin Wright. The political intrigues and the behind-the-curtain games in the White House have always been an interesting topic not only to the American viewers. House of Cards quickly became a hit. Kevin Spacey was nominated for many awards, this time as a producer as well.
No more pain.
You have a network in Netflix that didn't ask us to audition by doing a pilot, that believed in the track record that I had, that believed in the track record that David Fincher had, that believed in the emerging wonderful playwright Bo Williman, who's our showrunner and head writer, believed in the story, and said, how many do you want to do? And we said 2 seasons, and they said, go ahead. And we were given complete artistic control. They trusted the people they hired to do the job they hired us to do. And as a result, we've done the job we wanted to do. And it's worked out better than any of us could have possibly hoped. But I think in large measure it's because all the elements have come together and everyone's been at their best, reaching for something that we all wanted to make work. And we all believed in how to make that work. And we've all collaborated together in a very specific and energetic and satisfying way. And I think it's a lesson. I certainly have tried to instill this in my staff at the Old Vic. You know, over this past year and a half, I've been away. It's the first time in 9 seasons that I've been away. I only took House of Cards because we're 9 seasons in, and I felt like we're at a place as a company where I could afford to go away for a period of time. And everything that has happened at the Old Vic in the last year and a half, I've programmed from the road, because I was on the road with Richard III for 6 months, and then I was doing House of Cards for 6 months, and now I'm back doing House of Cards for another 6 months. We've had hit after hit after hit. So I know my staff is like, stay away, because whatever's happening is working. But here's why I think it works, and why it even worked while I was there. I trust the people I hire. And if you spend enough time with a director and a designer and maybe a leading actor or actress, and you know the direction you're trying to go in, trust them. They will deliver. If you're hoarding over them and constantly getting in their face and sort of giving your opinion about this, that, or the other, you can slow down the creative process. You can involve yourself in a way that you should not involve yourself. So I think there's a great lesson in trusting the talent you hire and letting them get on with telling the story.
Kevin Spacey didn't forget the theater either. He became the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre in London and produced Richard III on stage together with Sam Mendes. He managed to bring back the old glory of the theatre where Sir Laurence Olivier and Richard Burton have played. He carefully chose his roles in the cinema, and he strengthened himself as an incredible producer and a good manager.
It is unnatural to be revenged on him that loveth thee.
It is a quarrel just and reasonable to be revenged on him that killed my husband.
There's been times when, you, with all the greatest intentions in the world, you sign on to something and you discover maybe halfway through, maybe earlier, that you're at odds with the way in which something is coming together. And sometimes, you go and you see a cut of a film that you've made, and it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be, or you're absolutely convinced that you made a better movie than they've cut together. And sometimes you might mention this, and they will say to you, "Oh, but we tested the movie, and the scores are really big," and you say, I don't trust that, and I think we're going to get killed," and then they don't listen to you, and then the movie opens and you get killed. So I am more fortunate than many because those times have been very few and far between. Most of my experience, certainly in film and in huge measure in the theater, has been incredibly collaborative and very open. And I suppose that the reason for that is because when I go to work, I check my ego at the door, and so do the directors I work with, and so do the designers I work with, and so does the fellow cast. I don't know what people are like when they're not in rehearsal and they're not with you in a performance, but what they are when you are there and when you're all there together trying to do something that you hope will have an impact is that we're all there to serve the writing. Some of the problem in this industry is that people wake up and think that they're to serve themselves. And this is particularly true with actors. And I believe in my heart that my job, the job of the actor, is to serve the writer. Period. And if you serve the writing, you will serve yourself. You'll be in the right play, you'll be in the right circumstance, you'll be in the right film, you'll be in the right world. And I'm fortunate that many, many, many of the directors that I've worked with have understood that world and understood that same desire, and have helped push me and guide me and sculpt me and get rid of all the bad stuff. And I've been very luckier than most, that over the course of what has now been a longer career than I could have ever dreamed of having, there have been more things that have worked than haven't worked in my experience. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Part of Kevin Spacey's talent hides in his spontaneity.
Get ready.
He admits one of his favorite roles is a viewer.
No, there's a really incredible thing that happens, and it happens to me in the theater as well as happens in the cinema. But I'll use the example of the theater because I think it might just be a little bit more easier to grasp. You come into a theater, it is the most artificial place that you could walk into. You walk in and there's thousands of people, and they hand you a program, and you go and you sit in a seat that has a number, and you sit down, and there's a big exit sign there and a big exit sign there and a big curtain. And the lights are on and everybody's talking, and then the lights go down and the curtain comes up, And somehow, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into that play, you and 1,000 other people are taken into a world. And you believe that world. And you embrace that world. And you come out of that theater having had an experience that you won't soon forget. Seeing performances that just dazzle you. And yet it is in the most artificial environment you could think of. Now, film is quite different in that when you're watching a play, you decide what you want to look at. You know, you could be sitting next to me and you could be looking at something else on a stage and I'm looking over there at something else. I mean, the experience evolves to both of us in a slightly different way depending on where you're sitting and what your angle is and what you focus on. Whereas in cinema, every single thing you see or hear has been chosen for you for very specific reasons. And yet when cinema is at its best, at its most compelling, you are again drawn into a world. You forget that you're watching a film. That's my favorite thing, is when I go and I see something and I don't think about the filmmaking. I mean, I might be moved by an image, a performance, but I don't step outside of it and start thinking, oh, where was the camera? Oh, is that person wearing a lot of makeup or not wearing a lot of makeup? I'm not thinking on any of those levels. I am absolutely just engaged in a story. And that for me is the most exciting thing about film and about theaters, that it's not technical to me. It's spiritual, it's emotional, I love being taken to another world. I love it. And it doesn't matter whether that world is a dramatic piece or a documentary or a comedy or whatever it might be. If someone has done their job and everyone has come together and all those elements have come together, they can even make someone like me, who knows everything you could possibly know about what it is to make a movie or do a play, and take me somewhere I've never been. And that's an incredible feeling.
The life and the career often present challenges to Spacey. How does he deal with the choices in life that he has to keep making?
We don't put enough value in failure and what it teaches us. I mean, I know more than anyone could possibly understand that when I failed in something, it has been the very thing that helped me set myself up to succeed in something else. If I hadn't had that failure, I would have never succeeded there. I mean, I've had when I started out, I remember doing a play that had a certain theme to it, certain ideas to it, and I just wasn't any good. I wasn't able to achieve whatever that writer was going for, and maybe the director wasn't right, and I wasn't getting the kind of help that I needed. And then I did another play that had sort of similar themes, and I fell on my face again. Then I did a third play that had similar themes, and it worked. And I know it worked because I'd fallen on my face in those two other experiences. And I was ready for that third one. And that director was right. And it was a better role for me. So, you know, very often when something succeeds, you can't quite pinpoint why it succeeded. But you sure as heck know why something failed. And, you know, there's about 2,000 ways that something can go wrong, and only 3 ways something can go right.
An actor, a director, a producer with his own company that helps young talents to develop in the cinema industry. How do the young filmmakers feel about working with a Hollywood legend?
To me, he's a great star, and in my mind, he can act anything, he can play any part. And why should I, a person who accomplished nothing, tell the person who accomplished everything what to do? And if that's the way I look at him and I see the situation, then I'll be facing a problem. But if I think of him as if not this great star, but as a remarkably talented actor, it is in this case that there's a chance for this wonderful chemistry that exists between the director and his actor. Really nice person and an intellectual, so When he comes on set, he kind of eliminates all the barriers that could be there. There was a hug, we asked each other how we were doing, and he stopped being the Kevin Spacey.
I'm still a little nervous about directing Mr. Spacey. I'm sort of gonna see how that goes. When I got there the first time, I walked. The first time I saw Kevin on set, he was in costume. Not that it's an elaborate costume, you know, it's just a shirt and a tie, but he looked just as I imagined. It's very surreal to be walking around as your set and then have Kevin Spacey just sort of there.
When I first stepped onto the set, I was a little bit nervous. There is a certain degree of intimidation. He's one of the greatest actors of our time. That's intimidating. But he very early on put me at ease, and I very early felt comfortable giving him suggestions and telling him, you know, no, let's try this instead. He had some great ideas as well. You know, I would recognize that. I was like, yeah, let's do it that way. It became a very good working relationship very quickly. Kevin was one of the most gracious actors I've ever worked with. On the first day at lunch, I started having a conversation with Kevin that was not about the film. It was just a casual conversation. And I think that really helped just for us to connect a little bit. And in the next half of the day and the next day after that, I feel like we started to have a rapport that it was easy on set. He went from a year doing Richard III, then these films, and then he's going off to do something with Fincher. Like, I just like that I'm in the middle of that.
You know, and I guess also on some level, I'm hoping that this whole experience, coming to a place like South Africa, coming to a place like Russia, America, there's many more opportunities for emerging filmmakers to have a chance and a shot. But in a place like Russia, in a place like South Africa, where the film industries are still fledgling and beginning and trying to now make an impact, you know, maybe people in positions of power, maybe people who are wealthy and who at the moment don't do enough with their wealth, don't give it away. You know, why I like Mayor Bloomberg is because his belief is that if he leaves his daughters $23 billion when he dies, there's something wrong with the world. And that's why he's giving it away. He's trying to give it away faster than he's making it. And there are a lot of people in Russia who are very well off. And yet you have a film industry here that isn't supported in the way that it should be. So maybe someone who's rich will go, hey, you know what? That Jameson First Shot thing was a really good idea. Look what happened to that filmmaker last year, made that really specific story about Russia. Look what happened to that filmmaker this year. Maybe I should create something where I give enough money for 10 filmmakers to make 10 short films about our culture. There are undoubtedly 30 stories about something that has happened in Russia in the last 10 or 20 years, or even its previous history, that deserve to be told. This is the only way that a nation grabs its culture and owns it. Because you can go back through the history of time and say that the only way that great art ever happened was because it was commissioned. Because czars built theaters and opera houses. Because princes said, yes, we should do theater. Because someone said to Michelangelo, paint that ceiling for me, and here's the money to do it. The notion that art and commerce shouldn't meet completely obliterates the fact that most great works of art were supported by wealthy people and by governments. So you have a vast amount of people in these countries that are not being supported in the way they should be. So step up. Step up. Do something with your money. Jameson is. It's terrific.
I liked him more and more with every minute of that conversation. If I thought that he was a great actor before, now I think he's just an amazing person.
Meeting Kevin Spacey is an inspiration. He is an example not only to the cinema industry, but also of how a person can dedicate himself to others. Kevin truly gets pleasure from working with young talents and accepts their entrance to the cinema world as a personal calling.